on with the coverage of the Vegas shooting these last few months, and it's like, it is kind of weird. There's no videos yet. They haven't released a lot of information yet, and I don't feel like there's been a lot of transparency with what happened. I still don't totally understand what happened when they actually shot the guy. What why haven't they released some of the stuff yet? Or maybe they shouldn't. Maybe it's too gory or whatever. But it doesn't seem like there are a lot of answers.
This is hard for me only because I follow a lot of like these professionally for these people who are these conspiracy theorists.
These
and
maniacs,
a lot of them are dark people.
Yeah.
And so like my Twitter timeline is like half, like mainstream and half just like way out there, which is tough. But it's hard for me because I see the same people who put forward those questions, who have a lot of those questions, say about Vegas, and then the next moment they're berating somebody,
right,
on social media about something strange, or calling someone a cuck or something weird like that. And so it's just hard to like square those two things with, hey, there's something that maybe doesn't add up with these people. But I think what I spent some time last spring profiling Alex Jones, who's America's conspiracy theorist in chief. And I listened to hours and hours and hours of his broadcasts.
Oh, God.
And, we're talking like 100 hours of his broadcast, and would drive around listening to him on the radio. And he's really, I don't want to use the word genius, but he is, like, the way that his mind...
You can use the word effective.
Yeah. He's so effective at piecing together these things, at taking something that, like, is completely understandable, something that we just don't know, that we're not allowed to see, that and he's able to spin it. It's so great how he constructs these narratives. And what he also tends to do too is he knows now, and all these people do on the internet, these internet vigilantes, they know how these cycles work, so they can preempt things and gain credibility. So they can be like, I think in the next 2 months, there's going to be a huge school shooting because we need another false flag or something. But they just know because because we have a problem in America, there's going to be... And they use this to gain these little bits of credibility. And so, like, I was going back through the research, and there's this, like, 7 months or 6 months or something before 9/11, Alex Jones went on the radio and predicted something at the World Trade Center was going to happen. And so that is, like, held up by people who believe him as, like, he knew.
But he knew. But he probably predicted 300 things, right?
Yeah. You just, you take a lot of shots.
Yeah.
And nobody remembers the misses.
That's kind of what Skip Bayless does.
There you go. Yeah, this has been adopted. There's definitely like conspiracy theory like bleed into the mainstream in not harmful ways necessarily all the time. It's just like it's like part of the hot take, culture of everything. So
hey, we got to take a break to talk about March Madness. Speaking of madness, March is here, which means one thing: it's bracket time. Yahoo Sports Tourney Pick'em, the best place to fill out your bracket, all through the Yahoo Fantasy app. Joining a public group is easy, or create a group and play with your friends, or join Draymond Green's group for a shot at $25,000. Don't know your college hoops? Choose one of the autofill brackets, pick coaches with the highest winning percentage, or party schools, or totally rebel and pick least popular picks. There's no wrong way to fill out a bracket in Yahoo Sports Tourney Pick'em. Tate.
Yeah.
You doing a One Shining Pod bracket?
We are. We made one.
You made one?
Yeah.
Can people enter it? They have to wait a week, right?
No, you can enter it now. Sign up. We
One Shining Podcast?
I think it's something like that. I don't know. I didn't make it personally. But a group has been made.
Check out at One Shining Pod, which is our Twitter handle for that. And you can go head to head against Tate and Titus. I don't recommend it, but you can do it. Don't miss out on March Madness. Get your bracket in before the games tip off March 15th. Also, speaking of Yahoo, fantasy baseball in full swing. You play fantasy baseball, Charlie?
No.
A lot of fantasy baseball in Montana?
There's a lot of like minor league baseball in Montana.
It's time to start thinking about your fantasy baseball drafts. This is the greatest fantasy baseball year of all time because the Angels have somebody who's a pitcher and an outfielder, Ohtani, and nobody knows what to do in their league. Does he count as one person? Do we split him up? Flex your skills as a real GM. Crush your league with the Yahoo Fantasy app. the #1 mobile app in fantasy baseball. Draft, trade, manage your team right from your phone. The new weekly scoring format makes it even easier to run your team all season. Use the Set Active Players feature to set your lineup for the week in one tap. Sign up now at yahoo.com/fantasy-baseball. Create your own league. Join a public league. Do whatever you want. Don't miss out on this baseball season. Yahoo Fantasy Baseball, the official fantasy game of Major League Baseball. Would you say that we're in peak conspiracy culture right now, Charlie?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I imagine it's only going to get worse.
I'd love to know when this started. It does feel like JFK was the first time everybody kind of looked at each other and said, wait a second. Because then you see like the movies in the 70s, which had to do with, I think, the JFK assassination and some of the other great people that were murdered that decade. And then on top of it, Watergate, Nixon. And then you look at this era of movies that people were pumping out, basically from like 73 through 79, from 3 Days in the Condor, All the President's Men, all these kind of somebody's Marathon Man. I know something. The bad guys are coming to kill me. And it's been going ever since. And now we are in conspiracy culture. What's weird is we don't have movies yet that have really effectively. I remember Mel Gibson made a movie that was actually called Conspiracy Theory, and it wasn't very good. But I wonder if Hollywood is now going to move into this whole world.
I mean, they should. This is always like not always, but this is one problem I think with the internet is how it's tough to translate it to TV. You know, like a bunch of online vigilante detectives.
Computers are tough.
House.
Yeah, computers are tough, as we found out in Black Hat.
There you go. And so, yeah, but I mean, it's totally right for it. I mean, I think it's fascinating. You know, if you look at, there's just been so much interest in Watergate with that, like there was
the Slate podcast
about it.
I was jealous of that one.
You know, then you have like a lot of people rewatching and talking about and writing about All the President's Men.
By the way, Cinemax is definitely trolling everyone. They show that all the time. I feel like they bought like a lease of All the President's Men. They're just constantly putting it on.
I mean,
it's actually getting better somehow. 43 years later,
it's very relevant. And you know, like even the Post sort of has like a little bit of a feel in that.
It kind of half-assed it, but yeah.
And
I wish they had gone further.
And so I think that I do think that, you know, with the success of something like Spotlight, like I think there's going to be like a lot of journalism stuff to maybe come out of this, or some sort of enterprising, like I think political thrillers. We're going to see, you know, some more of those, because even if they're fictional.
I don't mean to get dramatic, but the people you're writing about are incredibly powerful and wealthy, and in some cases, you can make the argument that you're making their business look bad. Like, do you worry about your safety at all?
No. I think no. I mean, no.
Can I worry about your safety?
Sure, if you want. I mean, I think if we're talking about like the pro-Trump media types, like the Alex Jones types of the world, I mean, this is the difficulty of writing and reporting on them in any way is they're looking for attention too. So you have to find the right way to do this. Like to, you know, like I've had to write about, you know, like neo-Nazis a couple of times. Like,
we had those people in sports too. I don't want to name any names, but the any attention is good attention.
Yeah.
Philosophy is pretty dangerous.
And so what you have to do is you have to figure out like how to bring this to an audience, contextualizing it in the right way, not giving them what they desire. When, you know, I like
have some sort of balance and fairness at the same time you're crushing them.
Yeah. I mean, like I talk to a lot of people who don't talk to a lot of other mainstream journalists. And the one way that I've sort of gotten in with that crowd to some degree is that I just simply I ask them, so like, how do you want to be identified? Are you alt-right? Are you this? Are you that? Are you, you know, pro, like, and then I say how they want to be identified and I qualify. Yeah. I don't immediately call them a Nazi because, you know, they voted for Trump or something like that. And
that's a good philosophy. I like that.
And it's just, you know, so they get to be called what they want to be called, but then I also wrap it around all this context of like, so this guy says he's, you know, part of the quote unquote new right, and he went to Charlottesville and he did the, you know, it's like, so to some extent, it's not actually that hard to do it, but there's a reflex right now in a lot of reporting to have like a real perspective on some of this stuff. And sometimes really all that you need to do is to shine a light on it and just let people, make up their minds. And that's sort of the way to get them to talk.
Who do you think, let's go YouTube versus Facebook versus Google. Who should be the most ashamed of their performance over the last 2 years?
Google owns YouTube. So,
well, I'm talking about like
in terms of the
mechanism of Google. Yeah, the 3 services. Because I would argue Facebook. Because it seems like they knew the whole time, not to sound like Mark Ruffalo in Spotlight, but they knew! They definitely knew what was going on, and they just kind of all looked around and shrugged their shoulders. At the same time, YouTube is really a dark place, and, some of the child pornography stuff that was going on that you wrote about that, right?
Yeah, we revealed
but that was going on now this is where the Reddit conspiracy page does some good. They were on that.
Yeah.
Child porn stuff early. I had no idea. It's terrifying. It would honestly, the amount of content that was just on there that they did jack shit about. They should be ashamed of themselves.
I feel a lot like the Mark Ruffalo character these days. A lot. But yeah, I mean, you have sort of 2 different things. Like Facebook has sort of created to me a culture of. Facebook has sort of changed the internet, has sort of subsumed the internet to some degree. It's just like it's so many people's actual experience, and I don't think that they've done enough thinking about the ramifications of that.
Especially with younger kids. Like I look at the stuff my kids watch, and I wait till they fall asleep, and then I go in their YouTube history and stuff like that, and it's relatively tame, but there's also stuff in there. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
How do they find that?
Yeah. Yeah, and so YouTube to me right now is sort of my front runner, because I really feel like as you were saying, how do they find that shit? The recommendation algorithm in YouTube is, especially for conspiracy stuff, it's like an automated rabbit hole.
You could put like fake strangling kid.
I put
find that, and then it leads to like really a fake strangling of a 7-year-old kid who's screaming and seems unhappy.
Yeah, but it can be even more insidious than that, right? Like after the Vegas shooting, I was like, okay, how quickly can I get into a conspiracy theory with something just like reasonably, tame? So I just typed in Hillary Clinton, and like the first video that comes up is, her on MSNBC or something. Fine. 2 later, I'm in like, conspiracy sort of like Hillary was being injected by her bodyguard, because she had, I don't know, Parkinson's or something like that during the campaign. And then you just keep going. And then it's just like,
Hillary's an
Israel
alien.
and Palestine conspiracy. Like it just goes, it doesn't even have anything to do with that anymore.
Yeah.
And that is one thing on on conspiracy topics, but it works for any, like, any video that you want to do.
Well, the benevolent version is when you're searching NBA games or clips, and it's like, Michael Jordan, here's 1997 Game 5. It's like, hey, I'll watch that.
And that's what we like.
That's the fun part of YouTube.
That's the joy of the internet.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, that's what they've been selling. And I don't mean that in like a shitty way. Like that's what these social networks are selling. That's the product. This great experience, like things that, going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole and learning about all this different, random stuff. Like that's wonderful.
The cop out is, put in your information if you're over 18.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, my son is 10 and just says he's 18 and then he can watch it. But there's some dark shit on YouTube. Like, there's a politician, I think, like 40 years ago. Now I'm going to tell this story and people are going to search for it. But this guy who, in a live news conference, just shot himself and killed himself. And blood is like, it's disgusting. And it's on YouTube. And it's still on there to this day. And it's very easy to find. I do not recommend finding it. It's really horrible. But there's a lot of stuff like that. Now, when you get into the realm of like the Reagan assassination attempt, should that be on YouTube? Like, yeah, actually, maybe it should. It was a really relevant news event. It was one of the transformative moments of my childhood. I think it would be weird not to have it on YouTube. but there seems some sort of line, and I don't trust YouTube to